Okay, Kara Funcheon, thank you so much for being on the Authors on Audio podcast.
I'm so honored. Thank you so much.
So the first question I like to ask all my guests is, how did you get started with writing? Tell me all about that.
I am still a total nerd, and I was writing like Harry Potter fan fiction in the late 90s. So I've been writing ever since then, just obsessively, just stories and short stories. I've written pieces of other books throughout my life, and yeah, just fan fiction, like everybody. It feels like, of course, Harry Potter fan fiction of all things.
What Harry Potter house are you in? I wonder.
Ravenclaw, obviously.
Yeah, Ravenclaw. I might have guessed that. I did a little snooping on you before the
Oh yeah,
podcast, and I was like, if I had to guess, she
yeah.
seems like a Ravenclaw.
The woman with an educational doctorate is Ravenclaw. Shocker.
Do you feel like your doctoral work has influenced your writing in any way?
In a bit, yeah. I got really, really good at research. Obviously, for my doctorate, so I'm kind of become this massive fan. Like everything I do, I'm reading like PubMed. Or I said to my friend the other day, I was like, man, I wish I still had my JSTOR access just to I have a question about this random topic and I'd like to go research on it. So I would say that's probably what's led it the most, where I obsessively research because I'm also a reader and I'm in those reader spaces. I see some of the reviews that are like, obviously they did research, and I'm like, nobody will ever be able to say that about me.
It's definitely something I noticed about your book is you could just tell it was written by someone in academia because obviously Cassie's in
Yeah.
academia, so you could just see those influences there. Can you take me through your writing process a little bit? What does that look like?
So started when I started the bits and bobs of other books that I've written was just I have to get it out of my head. Like, let me just put this down on paper in a Google Doc. Let me write this scene here. And then with Echoes, I'm trying to be a lot more intentional about that. So I started with, because Cassandra from Troy was screaming in my head at first, which is how I got the inspiration for it. I just had to get it. I had to get it out on paper, and I mean, notebook, giant moleskins worth of just ideas and stuff like that. And then about 30% of the way through, I was trying to explain it to my husband, and I was like, I have to plot this out. So then I read Save the Cat writes a novel, one of like the writing book. And I was like, oh, I really need to make sure I do this beat by beat and really plot it out so that it makes sense, because I was doing a pantser, flying by the seat of my pants. And then I was like, this doesn't actually make any sense logically. And especially in Echoes, because it's a dual timeline and I'm following the Iliad, I had to make sure I was going, all right, I clicked that off. I've checked that part off. Okay, Paris goes to Sparta. Okay, he comes back. How do I make sure that the beats from Iliad were matching Cassie's story as well? So I've evolved into a plotter.
I would imagine that having a good plot structure would be really important when you're dealing with the dual timelines. Was there any point where anything got muddy or confusing, and how did you have to go back and rewrite anything?
Oh, for sure. I did so much editing. It originally, like, I think by the final edit, I printed it out at work, printed it out, and like went through it in binder, line by line, and was like, cut this whole scene out. So I probably deleted about 20,000 words for the final. Like, I just wrote it all down and then cut it back, because you can always cut back. You couldn't add anymore. So I had to make sure where the muddiness was especially the war part of the Trojan War, right? Because we don't have, like, I could have written about a war, I grew, I'm a millennial. You talk about Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Like, I could have done that as the actual war. But for Cassie and her mom, I wanted it to be more of like an internal, subtle war. And that was like, where it got really, really, really muddy. And I was trying to be really intentional about, it's a war for her family, but maybe not a war for the city.
Can you tell me more about Cassie's internal, like, what do you mean by Cassie's internal war? Was it just within her family or within herself?
A little bit of both, because yeah, like they say, write what you know. So I was like, yeah, Cassie became like a fully fleshed out character pretty instantaneous for me. I did Sandra because she's a real person, that like historical figure. And Cassie struggled not only with her own lack of self, like confidence. She had she's an incredibly smart character. She's a PhD in her own right, in classics, in mythology. And so she struggled with that war of, I have to be the expert. I am the expert, and I can sit in that and be confident in that. And that's something that I struggled with myself. So when I was doing my dissertation, I was teaching at the time, and I could stand up and teach you about, about the myths, about journalism, about as an English teacher. So let's read To Kill a Mockingbird 500 times. But that when you're with other people, other academics, I felt myself like, oh, am I smart enough to do this? So Cassie kind of has that same struggle. And so that was her inner war, and then the outer war with her brothers and the struggle to find her voice and be believed and be recognized as an expert, as somebody that she could be like, no, like I have a voice. I can say this. I have authority. Let me like put her shoulders back instead of
Mm-hmm.
like mousing away is what I'm like, that internal war for Cassie, and internally within her family. She's the youngest of three, and she's got these two older brothers, very Hector and Paris. They're supposed to be mirrored. That where she's just like, oh my god, why can't you see this? Like, and being technically the eldest daughter, but the youngest child was a little different. I'm not. I'm an eldest daughter of an eldest daughter, so and I have a younger sister. So I was like, how do I wrap in what it feels like to be an eldest daughter, while also being the baby of the family?
Is that, having that dynamic, is that part of what influenced you to choose Cassandra to focus on for this myth? Greek mythology retellings are so popular nowadays for good reasons. They're wonderful. I'm a huge fan. It's probably my favorite type of writing. And Cassandra is very niche within the Greek mythology retelling.
Yeah,
So, can you tell me more about that choice to go with Cassandra?
it's gonna sound crazy, but she straight up screamed at me in my head. Like it felt kind of, I had like a divine moment where I was to work at the school that I worked at, about 2 or 3 years into teaching mythology, uh, which was the greatest opportunity that I had while teaching, was to write my own class and write my own curriculum and be like, who wants to take it? And then had a full day. By the end of my teaching career, I taught 7 out of 8, no, 6 out of 8 periods of mythology folklore. Kids just wanted to sign up. They were like, I want to take Dr. Fun's class. And I was like, oh, yes, put 40 kids in there. Let's get them in. So one day, all of a sudden, I got this. The opening line of the prologue is, the men had it wrong. And I was teaching Greek mythology, and I was talking about, Homer and Euripides, all of those like great poets. And I went, the men had it wrong. And I was like, what if they did? And then it felt like Cassandra was like, yeah, they lied about me. I was a crazy woman, and I reread the Iliad and was like, this is such an interesting character that nobody talks about. So I had written that prologue probably 10 years ago. And it just sat there and just kind of like stewed, and I would think about it often. And then when I saw the like resurgence of people loving Greek mythology and wanting Greek mythology retellings, like Circe came out, Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, A Thousand Ships, and I was like, she's there, especially like A Thousand Ships and Silence of the Girls, which are more Iliad based versus Odyssey based. I was like, they keep making her like this crazy woman who talks to herself. And they're like, oh, well, maybe she had schizophrenia, maybe she had a psychotic break, and I was like, that still feels really misogynistic. Yeah, so she screamed at me. And then I remembered a book, just kind of to follow up on why then I did Cassie's story. I had read, for when I got my master's degree, I did a young adult literature class. I was at the University of South Florida. And I read this book called Conversion by Catherine Howe. It had a similar dual timeline, like, but it was the Salem witch trials. So it was like the Salem witch trials were going on in the same town, the Catholic school, and the girls going through it. And I was like, this is the most clever way to tell a historical fiction. I've never stopped thinking about that book. So when I had the opportunity to talk to Cassandra, she was like, it's not just my story. Cassandra was like, it's not just mine. This is happening over and over again. You need to talk about female voices yourself. So I was like, cool. I've seen this. You know, when we read things and we write things, we are inspired by others. So I was like, this is the most brilliant way to tell a story because it's such a universal topic of female rage and finding your voice and screaming it like so especially in today's day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a large focus on women getting overlooked. You know, you focus on Greek mythology, and I think obviously, a lot of female voices in Greek mythology get minimized because the stories were written by men. The Greeks were very patriarchal. So, talk to me about some of the ways in which you feel like women are being silenced in real life that parallels Cassie's story and Cassandra's story. You know, you said something that made me think of, so I'm a psych major, and yeah, very fun to study. But you know, something you notice in psychology is there are certain disorders that are mostly prescribed to women or get assigned to women for having big emotions or feeling
Hysteria.
things too. Yes, exactly. It does sort of translate into modern psychology a bit, you know, in the same way that you're talking about with Cassandra. Are there any ways in which you feel like your story mirrors real life right now that is, you know, is pertinent to your own storytelling?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, our current political climate, like, it kind of felt that a lot of our female representatives in politics were screaming, this is what's going to happen. Think of the overturning of like Roe versus Wade, uh, and the defunding of Planned Parenthood. People think this is going to happen. This is what Christian nationalism and far right movement wants. People are like, you're overreacting. And it happened. Like, look at this. So it does kind of mirror that what I felt for several years now. Or even during COVID, my mother was a nurse. I grew up around nurses where they were people like I remember my mom screaming from the top, like, I don't understand why people aren't listening. This is real. People need to wear masks. People need to vaccinate. Like, not listening to those experts. And throughout like my own journey of becoming a subject matter expert in my field, which is educational technology in high school, sometimes I would debate people and they're like, well, I've been in a classroom, I know what it's like. And I'm like, no, but I'm an actual expert. Like, I'm being trusted. Or people going, hey, I think this is going to have a large group, you know, women are often like, hey, I think this is going to happen. And they're like, you're crazy. And then it does happen. And they're like, told you.
Yeah, it is such an interesting parallel because, you know, with everything that's happening in today's climate, it felt very predictable, you know, to many people, but there is still a large demographic of people who still don't even accept that what's happening is happening, or they feel duped. They feel like they didn't, you know, realize what was going to happen, but you had to ignore so many voices. In a lot of cases, some of them were female voices, or, you know, the voices of just people who are historically ignored. And I imagine, you know, Cassandra represents a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it felt to me as well. Looking back in history, you know, I'll go down a rabbit hole on a random Tuesday, and my husband's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm learning about this thing." And the last one was, I can't remember her name for the life of me, but she was the one who did all the sanatoriums and how people were being in like the 1800s, where she became a patient herself, and then kind of did that expose on sanatoriums
Oh, I'm
and how
not familiar
people.
with this story.
I'll find it and I'll send it to you. That was a rabbit hole I went down, and I think about that often. It was finally like, yeah, look at all these women who were hysterical,
Yeah.
and then they were tortured, and it took that kind of investigative journalism and going back, like how many times have we heard about, and the voices are being buried, obviously, about, you know, like, this is what's going on, and people aren't listening until much later. And there was that famous quote that I don't know who it's attributed to, probably anonymous, that anonymous has always been a woman, like throughout history. And that's kind of like that with that Cassandra myth is that we just need to listen. It's
Yeah,
uncomfortable, and it's okay to be uncomfortable.
definitely. It reminds me of Aiden is such a the worst possible antagonist, right? I almost said protagonist. No, antagonist.
I'm so glad you hated him as much as I hated him.
Yeah, well done, because
Very much
I think that was the point to
so.
create someone very dislikable.
Yes. He was right, but I hated him so much.
Well, you did a great job because he's definitely about as dislikable as they come.
Yeah.
One of the points he tries to make is the type of analysis we're doing right now is inappropriately looking at these myths through a modern lens. He just really leans into that. Can you talk to me a little about why he's wrong and why it's not we're not falsely putting our modern ideals on these myths by bringing to light, pulling out some of these smaller voices in the myths. You know, you also bring up Penelope in the book, a few other female voices that don't get as much center stage.
Yeah. So the whole the reason that Aiden does that and he harps on it, and that's part of his like personality, because we've all sat in class. Like you were a psych major, I was English undergrad. Like we've all sat in a class where somebody just every time, and you're like, I am gonna explode. I feel like that was such like a universal experience. Maybe because a lot of my friends are English teachers, that we've all had that like one guy in the Shakespeare class who wanted to talk like such bravado and authority, and you're like, I think you missed that completely. Because and it's not, sometimes it's their fault. Sometimes it's they just don't have the life experience to kind of do that reader's lens with that kind of critical theory where it's like, let me take my own experiences and apply this to it. And I think it's important in mythology because it's a myth. So there's so much beautiful wiggle room to kind of be like, well, why not this way? Why not? Why couldn't Cersei have, she was a minor character in the Odyssey, but maybe she did have a greater, what we only see her through this one snapshot of Odysseus, who learns nothing. We could go on that, by the way. Like, Odysseus does not learn a single lesson. I'm reading the Odyssey right now. Some friends, because my little girl that I'm pregnant with, we're naming her Penelope. So I'm trying to read all of the books that have Penelope in it to give her a little library. Um, so I'm rereading the Odyssey, and I'm enjoying it immensely. I'm doing the Emily Wilson translation, the first woman to ever translate the Iliad and Odyssey completely. It's fabulous, and that is part of like a conversation that needs to be had about translations as well.
Mm.
Are we translating it correct? Are we translating these older translations of the Iliad and the Odyssey? Are those correct? Was there a bias and a lens that was applied to that as well, which I think is really eye-opening when you read Emily Wilson's translation. Fascinating. For example, in that one, because I love talking about it because it's so cool. So in an older translation of the Odyssey, when they talk about the women in um, Penelope and Odysseus's house, they call them the girls. Sometimes the word is slave, or they call it housemaids. But Emily Wilson is like, that's not how that word is. She like did a whole ancient translation. Again, a brilliant, brilliant shout out. Oh, love you. Um, she was like, no, they're slaves. So let's make sure that word, like, she's very intentional about the words that she translated, and that's where the difference comes through. Because we're now looking at a modern lens, being like, were they being paid? No, they were captured by Odysseus. He's a warrior. They were brought to, maybe it's an indentured servant more so than a slave, but the intentionality of you choosing those words, it doesn't say they were raped, they were forced upon, they were wanton women, were they? And I think putting that on lens of looking back and going, something feels off. That's all of history, right? We can look back. Hindsight's 2020, as they say, right? We look back, we go, ooh, ugh, maybe we should look at this a different way. Maybe we look at the Athenians a little different than we look, now instead of 40 years ago, as archaeology and sociology and all the ologies come together. Like, why not? Why not look at it a different way? Doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Doesn't mean anybody was wrong before, just a different lens because of different life experiences.
Totally. And I think, you mentioned it does also like so stories of Cassandra, this Greek mythology, it's mythology, right? It didn't actually happen, so you can interpret it however you want. But I think there's also something to be said for history, real life history that actually happened. Still, female voices are very underrepresented in history books in general.
In fact, these great women, which are fabulous, reading about Elizabeth the First or Joan of Arc or Catherine the Great, or I'm trying to think of Eleanor of Aquitaine. We learn about these women, but it feels like for every one really powerful and incredible woman, we have 20 really powerful, incredible men. But there's no way there weren't incredible women in between, or
Of
in
course.
the scenes. There's
Yeah.
no way.
No, absolutely.
Like, that's my next, we could talk about that later. My next book is also another feminist retelling. But, like, why not? Like, we could do whatever we want. It's fiction.
Totally. And that's a perfect segue. My next question was going to ask you, I thought I saw something about a Macbeth retelling on your
Yeah.
Instagram. So tell me a little bit about, without, spoiling too much, but tell me a little bit about why you chose Shakespeare for your next feminist retelling.
Yeah. Again, because I loved teaching Shakespeare. In one couple of years, I taught Macbeth to my 10th graders because that's my personal favorite, like, play, because it's so good. It's so bloody, and it's his shortest play too. Like, it's not very long, but it's just
Hmm.
gory and fun, and he goes crazy, and the witches are great. And Lady Macbeth is one of my favorite characters in the entire canon of classic literature that we get put in our curriculums as English teachers. There's these moments where you're like, there's a backstory that we're not getting. She says that she has suckled children at her breast. We never see the children, like Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. And the witches tell Macbeth that none of his children will ever be king. And then, no man born of woman would ever kill Macbeth. And there's Shakespeare, a genius. Dropped these little, it felt like Easter eggs to me. Maybe because I'm a Swiftie and I'm always like on the lookout for a good Easter egg. I'm like, what's that? Is it an album? Was 2 p.m. countdown? What, nothing happened? Clowning fully for Reputation Taylor's version every week. So it's something totally intriguing. And I love Lady Beth because she calls him out. He's like, look at this cool. The witches told me that I'm gonna be king. Isn't that fancy? And she's like, well, yeah, but you have to do something about it. And he's like, and she's like, no, 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 no. Let me back up. We need a plan. And it felt like it was another female voice was needed to be brought out into the open because she planned the whole thing. Like, Lady
Hmm.
Macbeth was like, we're gonna invite the king, then we're gonna murder him, and then we're gonna frame the guards for it. And Macbeth's like, I don't think we should do it. And she was like, yeah, well, I triple dog dare you, no takes backs. And he was like, well, now I have to. And then she goes crazy, but we never actually see her death on screen. And that's something I loved to talk about for Shakespeare. And when I was teaching, it was also height of Game of Thrones, right? If you didn't see that death on screen, did the death really happen?
Mm.
Because you didn't see it. So we never actually see Lady Macbeth's death. Macbeth gets a letter that says his wife is dead. A page comments, by the way, your wife is dead. That's what I hear about. It's like, well, is she dead? Is she?
That's super interesting. I love Macbeth too. I was a theater nerd growing up, so yeah, it's great. And I think also, Lady Macbeth, she's also a character you see a lot in these types of like older works that like the female characters they get villainized a lot. And Lady
Yes.
Macbeth she's always kind of that
Villain.
villainous, like the devil on his shoulder, getting him to
Yeah.
do. Maybe the same could be said of the witches. They're also the female characters, like egging him on. And it's almost like female ambition gets villainized
Villain.
in some of these works. I think you see that with Lady Macbeth.
You can see that with a lot of female characters, even female, like, historical characters as
Mm.
well. Like, think of um, Mary Queen of Scots, right? She's kind of villainized, in a
Mhm.
way. Like not maybe not it's coming out where it's is she really the villain? You know, you hear about like how cruel the first was. Or, you know, all the stuff with colonization in Victoria, Queen Victoria. Um, so it does kind of feel like female ambition does get villainized, but male ambition never gets villainized. They're great men. They might not have been good men, but they're great men.
I want to talk a little bit about this is a little bit of a spoiler for anyone who hasn't read the books, but you made a choice at the end of the books that I found so interesting. You made a choice for Cassandra to escape. She gets true to mythology or how the myth is usually told. She's ignored the entire time Troy falls. Usually she's taken captain by Agamemnon. In your version of events, she escapes. Why make that choice?
I didn't like her ending. That's like the honest answer. I was just like, yeah, I reread the Iliad and I was like, no, ew,
It's so dark.
it's
Yeah.
so dark. And then reading their plays, Agamemnon's wife, I never say her name right, Clemenceau.
Clytemnestra.
I never say her name right. It's one of those ones where you only see it written down and you're like, I'm made up. I think that word is,
I listened to the audiobook, so I got like good training on how to say the name because I heard it over and over again.
yeah. And then she kills Cassandra and it's like, it's not Cassandra's fault either. And I'm like, no, I just didn't like that ending. I didn't think it was fair to her. I didn't think it was right. It didn't, and to me, that ending didn't feel right. If she needed her justice,
Mm.
so I tried. I gave it to her. I was like, no, she's gonna survive. Her handmaiden, who's been there her whole life that she's grown up with, also has this agency, and that's kind of maybe what that's a great word for it, that I gave both women agency, where her handmaiden is like, they don't know what you look like. Let's just put, and they're not gonna notice, like because they're not looking for that, not looking for women. They're looking for women to take back as sex slaves, because
Yeah.
that's what happened. So if I just put your crown on and your clothes on, they'll just assume that I'm you, because I'm dressed as you, so that you can escape because you deserve to have that happy ending. You just, not instantly a happy ending because like her entire city and all of her family is
Yeah.
dead, and she's presumed dead. But she had gone through so much, with everything that goes on with Apollo, with her brothers, and like in the family tree, I only mentioned a couple of her. I only mentioned Hector, Paris, and her twin. Um, but they have like her family has 12 to 15 children.
Mm.
So it was like, yeah, I only mentioned a couple of them. She went through so much. She was, you know, she tried so hard, and I just couldn't let her die without the good old college try to get her out of there. And she does. And then, as we know, like you get the Iliad, you get the Odyssey, and then you get the Aeneid about Aeneas traveling and coming, going to Italy. Like, why couldn't she be there? We don't know. That's why I
Yeah.
gave her that little like secondary love story too. It didn't like, and I started writing Echoes years and years and years ago, and then um, put it down. And my now husband is the one that was like, "You should pick this up and write it." And I was in love, and you know, he's my biggest supporter and my biggest cheerleader, and I felt like both Cassie and Cassandra also needed a cheerleader, and to have somebody say, "I believe in you," because that's what
Mm.
my husband does for me. I believe in you. Like it's the best thing in the world to hear that. Like, do it, write it. What's gonna happen? What's the worst that's gonna happen? I believe you can do it, and it was so freeing. So I had to give it to the girls too.
Yeah, and it was definitely a more satisfying ending than if I like a good tragedy. I'll read a tragedy. I've no problem with it,
Yeah,
but it was nice to see her get some semblance of a happy ending, especially because she is such a tragic character in
so
Greek mythology.
I'm Medusa next. That's my next myth retelling. That's another one that I could write about for hours because that's a fun character. But I didn't want to write about characters that everybody does. Like, you know, you feel like there's 1,001 retellings about Hades and Persephone, who were super, super fun.
Totally.
Love
Yeah.
them. You
Love it.
know, love it. You see Achilles and Patroclus all the time. And I'm like, there's so many more fun characters that we could write about.
There really are, and I'm glad you chose one that was new because when I saw that your book was a Greek mythology retelling, I got very excited because again, it's one of my favorite genres, if not my favorite genre, just mythology retellings in general. And when I saw that it was, you know, a smaller character, I was like, oh, something new finally, because it's true. There's so many.
And, you know, teaching about this too, like I loved talking about Atalanta and her, like I always did it in my class. I always talked about the female heroes, you know, Atalanta and the Golden Apple and who she was and the founding of the Amazons. Like I loved telling those stories. Like that would be a great one to do next to the Amazons, like a retelling about these, like not in a Wonder Woman sort of way. It was also just an excuse to watch the first Wonder Woman. Like let's talk about the Amazons, Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Marvel and how it's all every story is the same in the hero's journey. So
Speaking of heroes, I want to talk about your version of Apollo a little bit because in a lot of the retellings I've read, Apollo gets villainized a lot. Rightfully so, because I think he makes some bad choices. Yes, you make him, you know, you give him room for growth, especially
yeah,
at the end when he has that conversation with his sister at the end of the book where, you know, it's almost like and what did we learn type of conversation. So tell me about that choice to give Apollo room to grow by the end of the story and not repeat his past mistakes.
that is. I'm so glad you picked up on that. My favorite thing, my favorite thing about Greek mythology specifically is how human the gods are. Yeah, it might be immortal and they're sitting up you know, on their clouds and doing their thing and looking down on all of us and playing chess with humans because that's what the Trojan War was, right? Like everybody was mad at each other, but they're so inherently human. That's what I love. Like they're not perfect. Zeus is definitely not perfect, right? You know, that's like my girl is not perfect. She gets jealous and turns people into spiders, and they have hubris themselves. Like, they have these fatal flaws because the humans that created them, that created their religious system, were so flawed themselves. And love that's my favorite part about Greek mythology. Sometimes you can see it in the other mythos, like every once in a while you can see it in a Norse mythology tale. You know, Thor is not you know, Hemsworth, perfect, like sculpted person, right? Like in Norse mythology, Thor is kind of a bumbling idiot at times. Lovable, of course, loses his hammer all the time and he's like, where did it go, where did I leave that? But I love that part. Like I loved the human aspect, and as human, if we created the gods because we needed it, we would also want a second chance. We would also want growth. We would also want, hey, I have an opportunity now, like to redo this, can I make a better choice? And as much as Apollo is fickle, right? Like we've seen it. If you really read into all of Apollo's lovers, he's jealous and he flies off the cuff. He doesn't really think that's Artemis's job, right? Like they're the sun and the moon, right? He's that the sun is explosive, right? And not as calm. It's got those little, you know, sun flares. And I just thought he deserves a like yeah, like I tease him all the time in my own head when I'm talking about the gods. I'm like, oh, you know, Apollo being Apollo, you know. I think it's fascinating to give because they're humans and humans get second chances and humans have to have a what did we learn moment as well. And you need somebody like a twin sister, like Artemis, like your best friend, to be like, did you learn your lesson this time? Yeah. So
Yeah.
why not?
I appreciate it. It was a nice touch to his arc too because he is so you just get the sense he's so hot-tempered. You know what I mean? Like he just flies off the handle so fast and he's out here just dishing out these curses. Like and it was nice to see, you know, kind of similar with Cassandra's arc. It was nice to see like okay, everybody is getting space at the end of this story, at the end of this version of the story to grow and do better.
Yeah. Love that scene when he is with Cassie and going through the same thing, and he goes, "So suffer, you're just like her, so suffer
Mm-hmm.
like she did." It's one of my favorite lines that like. It's so simple. It's not like a profound line, but I remember writing that. I'm like, oh, this is good. Like, so suffer like she did, and he leaves Cassie, and she's like, "What just happened?" Because that's him, like, go flying off the handle, like, not and
Mm-hmm.
not taking responsibility for
Mm-hmm.
cheating on Cassandra. And she was like, that's a boundary. We're not doing this. If we're gonna be together, you're gonna be with me. Because at the time, it's just right about the time she figures out that the gods are real and kind of all around her, and you know, it's a great boundary that both Cassandras pull up. And Cassandra in Troy is like, excuse me, you're cheating on me. I'm the princess of Troy. I could be a priestess. I'm important. I'm a chosen one of not just you, but I know Athena's here watching over me. How dare you? But Apollo he's a guy. He deserves. Everybody makes mistakes. Does he really learn from it? I guess we'll have to find out.
You mentioned Athena. I want to talk about it's Dr. Hawthorne, right? Look at my notes. Yes, she's sort of like seems to be mirroring Athena. So you could correct me if I'm wrong. In the original myth, it seems like Athena is just like not there, right? She's not there for Cassandra. With Dr. Hawthorne's character, she is more it seems like she's more giving Cassie space to fight her own battles and
Yeah.
grow. Is that part of your interpretation of Athena in the original myth?
Yes. So, and again, rereading the Odyssey is really giving me so much more insight into Athena than I did when I first read it as a ninth grader myself. And again, like reading Emily Wilson's translation, Athena's a major, major character in the Odyssey. You could almost argue that Athena is the main character because she's the one that's playing all the cards and pushing people. She's the one to Telemachus, like, let's go find your dad. I'm like, I know where it is. And Odysseus is her chosen person. And I feel like that's what she does. That's Athena doesn't fight anybody's battles for them. She's there to be the sounding board. Like I got this problem. Can I please just talk at you for 15 minutes? And Athena's that friend, that mentor. That's like, go ahead, let's talk through it. Because she is so wise. And she can see all those chess pieces and she controls the chess pieces. But she never makes the choice for somebody. Like, yeah, she's like, maybe, there's makes sure Odysseus goes to Troy with the Greeks. But she never makes his choices for him. She leads him to those kind of observations. And I always found that to be Athena herself. And I mean, she's hot-headed. She's a child of Zeus. They all got it. You know, like she makes the wrong choice. Was Arachne really deserving to be turned into a fighter? And I felt like Dr. Hawthorne let Cassie be that well because she saw. I think that was Athena's way of seeing a second Cassandra and going, I may have picked the wrong character. I may have moved the wrong chess piece. Can I fix this? If I move this piece, if I play this card, if I give this person advice instead of an Aiden, instead of an Odysseus, what if I give Cassandra the voice this time? What could change? And I think it changes the whole, even in like maybe that's now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's why Cassandra lived because Athena changes something in the future, that ripple back effect, or she changes the past. It's like let's have Cassandra survive so that Cassie millennia in the future also can survive.
Mm.
Because she's wise and intelligent. Like, that's her thing, right? She's a weaver. So she's the goddess of weaving. So she's weaving these little bits and bobs in there as well.
I love that so much. It's so
My
fun
girl,
to
like, I have a full on, like, Athena tattoo.
nice. Look at that.
I have an Athena tattoo on my bookshelf from the Parthenon. Like, I was like, that's my girl.
Yeah, I mean, you could see her influence definitely woven throughout the story. So I could tell you she takes up a big place in your heart. Talk to me about what that was like independently publishing your first book.
So I queried for a really long time and edited and changed scenes and rewrote scenes while I was querying. And querying, if you've never done it before, can be incredibly heartbreaking because you're going to get more no's than anything in the world constantly. No, thank you. No, thank you. Thank you. And that's a big character thing as somebody who is a perfectionist and has excelled on things. Like, being told, no, we don't like it. No, that's not good. Like, oh, it's just a shot of the heart. It helps you. Like, you know, you got to have tough skin to be an author. So I queried for about 9 months to a year. And I got picked up by a very small independent press. And I was thrilled. Right. Pop the champagne. I got a book deal kind of thing. Small one, you know, there's no advance, but it was, we're going to do your cover. We're going to give you professional editing. We're going to market this book. We'll put it on Anchor. We'll put it on Amazon. Like, we'll do all this stuff for you. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I know I'm not Madeline Miller and I'm going to get this multi-millionaire debut author writing an incredibly niche genre. Like, and I get that. And summer, I got an email saying that they were closing their doors. And I was the next book on the list. Like, I was the next, like, all right, you're next. Like, it was sent to an editor. I had a cover artist. We were working through it. And they're like, by the way, we're closing. We can't do this anymore. Here's all of your rights back. Here's all the edits that we've already done. Here's the images for the cover if you want to use them. The rights came directly back to me, which I was fine with. And I sobbed. Went to my husband. I was like, what do I do? Querying just killed me. And he's like, so let's do it ourselves. And I was like, what? And he's like, you can do it. I have a very dear friend. Her name is also Kara. Kara Reynolds. She's fabulous. The book for her, by the way. Oh God, Pilgrimage is so good if you haven't read it yet. It's so good. She's a genius. And she was like, well, I did it. I can help you kind of like navigate how to where to upload things and give you advice. I was like, why not? Then I maintain absolutely everything. So I hired cover artist. I found her on Instagram. It's Instalove Graphic Design. She designed the cover for me completely out of her wheelhouse. She does really great bright romance cover. And I was like, hey, I have a Greek mythology retelling. And she read like snippets and she was like, this is fabulous. Yes, I'm taking this on 100%. She designed it for me. My own ISBN, so it's not owned. The rights are not owned by Amazon. Like, I own the copyright, I own the ISBN, and the hardest part about being an indie author is marketing. Because you feel like a jerk. Please buy my book. Like, feels desperate, but it's all cake for me. You know, I got the story out. The girls got their voices told. Maybe it'll take off. But I'm so happy with making sure that, like, with being true to myself, I have all the cards. The ball's in my court. Love it.
Definitely. And just so you know, I mean, every single indie author I have interviewed has said that marketing has been the most difficult part. Every single one. That's not an exaggeration. If you go back and watch every podcast, every indie author says it's the worst part of independently publishing.
I was really fortunate. I did the Tarpon Springs Book Festival last week on indie bookstore day, because I live in Tampa, so it's in Tarpon Springs. And Tarpon Springs is mentioned in Echoes. It's a write what you know kind of a thing. Like, my dad used to work for the city of Tarpon Springs, so I was like, I could describe Tarpon Springs with my eyes closed. And they're all Greek, so it worked perfectly. And sitting at my little booth being like, do you like Greek mythology? Do you want to read my book? Hi. Like, I'm an author too. It, like, especially in the age where it's like, does it have spice in it? I had that question a couple of times. Is it spicy? And I was like, no, that wasn't the story I needed to tell. And they're like, well, I'm good. It doesn't have spice in it. I don't want to read it. I'm like, get it. Like, you need it every once in a while. But I sold 35 books. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm almost at 1,000 total orders. And I'm thinking of doing a giveaway at 1,000 once I hit 1,000 orders. So
congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah. Big number. A couple of people were like, I have your book. And I'm like, oh, you have my book? They're like, I just saw it. I did your Kindle day. And I was like,
the last question I like to ask all my authors when we get to the end of the podcast is, I think, for you, you've talked about, like, obviously Greek mythology, the Odyssey, you mentioned Silence of the Girls and a couple other things. Are there any other authors or books or writers that have influenced you the most or that, just really influenced your writing, other than anything you've already mentioned?
Um, Percy Jackson.
Oh,
Like,
fun.
God, what a comfort read. I read it all of the time. I love what, Uncle Rick has given the gods, the personalities, again, the flaws of the gods. I legitimately have read every single book of his probably 10 times because it's such a, I like to read right before I go to sleep to turn my brain off. And so I read something I've already read before. If you fall asleep in the middle of a sentence, like, you know what's happening. You
Yeah.
accidentally like fall asleep turning the page. It doesn't. You just pick it up because you know the story. So I'll read like all of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, all of Heroes of Olympus, all of the Kane Chronicles, all of the Magnus Chase, all of the Apollo series, and then I start over. And I just every night I just go through all of his books because it's again I'm trying to turn my brain off. I don't know how much I'm going to do that, but right now it is. So Rick Riordan is a big influence on me. My favorite classic author is Jane Austen.
Oh,
Obviously.
the best.
My girl Jane. My cat, who unfortunately we just had to put down last week.
Oh, I'm so
He was
sorry.
called. His name was Mr. Knightley.
Oh,
Like because of the line, if I loved you less, talked about it more. Like what a line. Um, I read so much. I've read so many incredible authors. Like I want to write a thriller because of Ashley Winstead. Because I could read everything that she could write the phone book and I would buy it. Riley Sager again I'd love to read a thriller. Thrillers are so hard though. You get the twist right. Um, that's like I'm a voracious reader myself. Minimum of 52 books a year. I try to read one book a week, and I love these authors, and it's incredible what they do. Yeah, Madeline Miller, she's fabulous. Margaret Atwood, how do you not love her? Great. Love Margaret Atwood. The Handmaid's Tale is a formative book in my personality, making me who I am. And the Penelope is incredible if you haven't read that version of the Odyssey. It's nice and short. It's just about Penelope. It's fab. Written in a similar style too, so it's kind of like in verse versus a prose, which is incredibly difficult to do. But God, Margaret Atwood, what a woman. I love her. Again, one of those ones where I would just cry at her feet if I met her.
Kara Funcheon, thank you so much for being on Authors on Audio and talking about your book, Echoes of Prophecy. Everyone go pick up your copy. It was such a joy talking to you. There it is. Perfect.
Yeah, I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. It was fantastic.